Hello, everyone. Welcome to Plywood's first ever virtual black box. My name is Jeff, and I'm the founder of Plywood People. What an unusual time. This is very different. Our black boxes in the past have always been very low tech. We had no microphones, no technology, and now we've gone completely tech savvy. So hopefully this all works for us today. I'm thankful for everyone that's here. There's already about 60 people on, and I want to stop right now and say, before we begin and before we invite Eryn and Terence in, that if you want to take a second right now, invite your friends to be a part of this. Just join us tell people on social media, join us, send the link out. We can have as many people as possible on this. We'd love to have them join us. And if they miss out, then this will be online afterwards for free also. So thanks for joining us today. A few announcements, again, before we invite Eryn and Terence to join us. We have a few things. On the bottom of your screen, you should see this thing that says ask a question. So if you want to ask a question to Terence and Eryn, the first half, we're going to go through my questions for them. The second half, we're going to go through your questions for them. And in the questions, you'll have the opportunity to vote and share, like, this is a really good question. So vote it, get it to the top. So we'll be asking the best questions at the top. I'm very much expecting some of my friends out there, all of our community, to ask some question that's silly for me, but that's fine. We'll do that. Next week, the same time, this link will be available again. We'll be doing our second Black Box session with my friend Brad Montague. Brad will be calling in from Tennessee, and he has a book that he's launching next week. So we're going to learn all about innovation and creativity, how to not think like a grown-up, from Brad next week, which will be fun. If you post anything today about this black box session, it could be a picture, it could be a quote, it could be anything that you want from this, and post it on Instagram. Please share and tag at Plywood People. And we're going to do a giveaway. We're going to give away one of Eryn's shirts. We're going to give away one of Terence's books. So please share this with others. And then on April 15th, we're doing a special path program. This is our training program, the first thing that we do. It's given everything that's happening right now. We're going to do a pay what you want path program. So you can either do it for $49, $99, or $199. So if you know someone that's trying to launch something, trying to figure out what their role and problem they're supposed to be involved in society, then encourage them to sign up for that. Two last things. If you're in the midst of your work and you need some help right now, you have questions, we have 100 advisors at Plywood that want to help you. And so you can email Bethany at plywoodpeople.com. She'll send you a link, and we're going to match up specific needs that you have with advisors for 15-minute calls in this time. So feel free to do that. And lastly, if this is an encouragement to you today, we are a nonprofit. You probably see a button on the bottom that says donate to Plywood People. We would ask, maybe you could just give $5, maybe you give 500, maybe you want to sponsor the next one. Consider giving some amount of support to our work so we can keep doing this and making it free to everyone that needs it. So those are my quick announcements. Please ask questions, join the poll, keep the conversation going. And now I'm going to add in Eryn and Terence. Hopefully this all works really quickly.
Yeah.
Hello.
What's up? What's going on?
I'm going to do a quick introduction. This is a little different than the average Plywood event, but I'm going to do my best in a virtual way to do this. So Eryn is a longtime friend of Plywood People and literally officed with me for multiple years. Her confetti and glitter was everywhere in our office, but it was all right. We dealt with it. She's the founder of So Worth Loving. She's working on her first book. I think maybe just turned it in. And has tons of creative projects going. So Eryn Eddy is with us. And then secondly, and no order specific, is Terence Lester. And Terence is the founder of Love Beyond Walls. He, if you follow him, about every 3 months, he launches a significant new project, which I love. Has an exhibit that is amazing, really serves and gives awareness to some of the most vulnerable in our world. He also has a book out that's incredible. And so here's what, and normally at Plywood, we give standing ovations. And this is a little hard, right, when we introduce it. So here's my request. And this is going to warm everyone up. on the right in the comments, could you all just give your best handshake, whatever emoji you want in support of these two? It could be the hands, it could be a handshake, it could be a high five. Give it up for a standing ovation for Eryn. Give it up. There it comes. Here comes. You can just let it flow through the comments. I love it. Standing up. I love it. Okay. So let's start off. So the two of you, share with us kind of what's been going on with the two of you. How are you doing and what's been happening with your work?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eryn. You start us off.
Yeah. I mean, this whole thing has definitely impacted Source. We've dealt with a fulfillment facility having to take extra precautions, which has caused us to have delays in fulfillment, shipping, and in addition to just when we have people on our staff. So, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm having a hard time hearing you, but just keep going. It'll be okay.
Okay. My echo?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Do you hear that, Terence? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Can you hear me well, though?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay.
Just a second.
I might need to pop out. Yeah, so that's just learning how to deal with the devices and everything, the team, their emotions, everything that I deal with. Why don't you go? We'll figure out what's happening.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm a nonprofit leader, and I guess the rise of COVID-19, shifted a lot for our organization in terms of volunteerism, right? Because volunteers are quarantined. It also impacted us financially as well, because, we're living in an economy and it seems like the economy is going down. So people started to be self-preserving, right? And so we had a lot of donors actually pull out. And the second half of that story, though, is that the community is still in dire need of support, right? So we were kind of, operating a lot of our programs on just a few people. When we had this aha moment, probably about a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, we kept having a lot of our clients who are experiencing homelessness express their fears of contracting the coronavirus. And when we would ask a question like, what's causing that fear, what's driving that fear, they would respond by saying, because I haven't been able to wash my hands. I can't wash my hands. And then I keep hearing that we're supposed to wash our hands. It dawned on me that people experiencing homelessness really don't have access to running water. And with like businesses shutting down, public spaces shutting down, it will make it even harder for individuals living on the street to have access to running water and soap, some of these essentials that helps to protect against the contraction of the COVID-19 virus and the spreading of it. And so I started doing research and figuring out ways that we could, kind of disseminate water to this population of people, and came up with the idea that we would use a portable hand washing station, which is caused us to pivot. We went from, having people come to our facility to pivoting to taking these portable hand washing stations out into places and spaces where people experiencing homelessness is. And, the pivot actually boosted momentum and involvement, and, people from all around the country and even internationally. I've spoken to a few countries since launching this campaign have expressed interest in wanting to actually install these in cities. So right now, we are about to install probably about 30 more hand washing stations in 3 cities outside of the state of Georgia. And we've been talking to public officials about the possibility of making this a permanent thing. So that's kind of like where I am right now. It's overwhelming.
You have been busy for sure. Lots of media, but also like just on the streets trying to help people, which has been incredible.
Yeah.
Eryn, let's see how your sound is now. You still there?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't know why I'm doing this. I might pop out again.
That sounds good. I'll invite you back in when you get off.
Okay.
Cool. Well, Terence, let's keep talking. So I think a lot of people are kind of questioning, the importance of their work. Like when you can't actually serve people anymore, on the for-profit side, they might be going, what's the point of all this? On the nonprofit side, it might be like, can I even continue this? Right.
Right.
So when you're confused like that, how do you process, like, should you keep moving forward with this mission? How do you confirm it or be like, I need to move on?
Yeah. For me, I can't speak for everybody else, but I think like moments in crisis kind of crystallizes what you stand for. And it shakes, it kind of gives you a pulse or sense of where your values really are. Moments like these crisis moments will actually reinforce what you believe and how you believe it, right? And times of crisis and confusion should actually push you to seek healthy ways to pivot. I don't think it's a time to quit. I think it's a time to reevaluate of how you can continue to move forward while maintaining, what you believe in your mission.
So did you take a minute and you're like, this is like, I'm all in or all out, or what
Man,
did you go through?
I went through, I mean, it was hard. It was, it was like a level of denial at first, right? Is this really happening? This can't be happening, right? The volunteer application kind of tapers down and the donations stop coming in. And it's this realization of like, wow, like I'm in the middle of this thing. Is this, is this something that I'm going to continue to do? And for me, because I've been in close proximity with, the population of people that we serve, listening to the stories kind of crystallize what I would continue to stand for. Just hearing the hardship and also the problems kind of like, created this solutionary mentality in me. Like, how can I continue to proceed while also meeting the needs of the people that we're fighting for? And I think the stories within itself gave me the fire. And I was interviewing on a panel probably last week, and the question was, what are these moments teaching us? And my response is that we need to pursue health, like healthiness, not just healthiness within our physical bodies, but healthiness in our relationships, healthiness in the ways that we operate our business, healthiness in our country, and how we love and care for our communities, but also healthiness in the way that we perceive others. And just knowing that, it just reinforced, what I wanted to stand for. So I had to lean in, man. And leaning in doesn't mean that, you're following courage absent of fear. Fear is going to be there, but you're still leaning into the courage part of, your hope and your faith. Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to invite Eryn back in, and hopefully, I think she's back on. We'll see if we can get her back in here. I agree. Like, I think in moments like this, it's like, I think we all go through this debate whether whether the stuff we are doing has meaning, right? Like whether it even matters, we're sitting at home. We're like, is anyone even paying attention? Does anyone care about my business? The people that I've served all these years, does it matter to them anymore? And I think we probably play these games in our head of real highs and real lows. Is that fair for you too?
Yeah. Yeah. Fair. I think that's the nature of being an entrepreneur. You're going to have highs and lows. And what I like to say is, that you can't allow the emotions of the moment dictate your commitment to your mission or your call, right? And so for me, I've had to lean more into the muscle memory of discipline
Hmm.
versus like leaning into my fears and the unknowns and the uncertainty. Yeah.
What does that mean when you say the muscle memories of your discipline?
Of discipline. It's where grit is, right? It's about persevering. It's about being hopeful that as you continue to show up, that better days will come, right?
Mm.
Yeah, it's the valley in between two mountains. There's another mountain peak ahead, but do you have the grit and the perseverance to have stick to itiveness to continue? It's discipline. Yeah, and discipline is not necessarily fear. I'm seeing the comment, and I totally agree. You could still be afraid, but you're continuing to show up, and you're disciplining yourself to press forward. It doesn't mean that you may not feel anxious. It doesn't mean that uh, you're grappling with the unknowns, but your discipline is going to convict you to continue to show up.
Mm. So in the midst of that, so say, I mean, today's all about mission and pivoting, and you're
Yeah.
talking about how do you keep going. I mean, the hard part is like, what do you stop doing and what do you start doing, right? Like, do you kind of go through a process of what's working and not working? Like, how do you wrestle through that?
Yeah. Well, um, I in this moment, I've had to ask myself some really hard questions, like,
Hmm.
you know, what can we continue in reality? Like, what's the things that we can continue based upon the parameters of the times, and what needs to actually either end or be put on pause. And literally, the pivot that we've had to make was literally pausing a lot of the programming that we were doing from our center and pivoting to a new mission. It's tied into our mission, or it's the focus that we're on now is tied into our mission, but it's a pivot. It's not our traditional approach to doing the work that we do. Um,
I
and
like
then
that.
I also my stepfather always says, have a solid vision, but make your plans fluid, right? Um, and basically, what he's saying is just because you have a vision that is solid and you know where you're headed, doesn't necessarily mean that the methods by which you get there will always be the same, right?
Hmm.
And that's what I've learned is to keep my vision solid, but my plans fluid. And these times have provided different opportunities that we haven't normally been involved in, but we're still accomplishing the same vision.
Isn't it ironic that in the midst of this conversation, we've had to pivot and try to figure out how to do this without Eryn? Isn't this, it makes it so
Right,
ironic, right?
right.
She's texting me and she's like, the technology's not working right. So we're going to keep trying to get her on. If you're wondering where Eryn is, she is hustling hard to figure out how to join us. It makes it's very relevant to the conversation, right? Like
Yeah.
this is the story we're all in right now, that we
Mhm.
had a plan, right? And we had meetings set up, and we had events set up, and we had a grant we thought was coming in, and we had business that we were counting on, and we didn't think we were going to be teaching school this week with our kids, right? Like, these are all major changes that all hit us all at once, and now we got to figure out what to do given this new reality, right? It's
Yeah.
not, it's not going to be the same.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I've also been figuring out that in moments of crisis, less is more. And
Mm.
when I was, thinking about making these pivots, I had this mental picture of mountain climbers, where mountain climbers at the bottom of the mountain, they have a bunch of gear. They may have tents or like chairs set up, or a campfire. They have all these things, but as they continue to climb, or head towards the peak of the mountain, the gear becomes lighter. And one of the reasons why the gear is lighter is because they understand that the more that they have on them, it will cause pressure, and that pressure will, kind of keep them from scaling higher, right? And so, I kind of, see that just like how we are now in moments of crisis. You got to think about what you can unpack so you can continue to move forward. So
Hmm.
you can continue to scale, so you can continue to climb, and less is more in moments of crisis. And then I've also learned, Jeff, that you have to focus on what's in front of you. Don't beat yourself up for like dropping balls or failed plans. Be okay with doing right what's in front of you, and I think doing what's in front of you continues to allow you to take one step in front of the other. You know, I've read a quote, and we probably all seen this meme, that slow progress is still progress, right? And we forget that.
Hmm. Yeah, less is more. I mean, in general, I think most of us are like, yeah, there's only so much we can do right now, right? Like
Right.
that's the mindset. I think sometimes we're like, well, maybe there's nothing we can do. Well, I can't do X, Y, and Z because, well, all my plans change. So it's all done. We're quitting. It's over. We can't move on. That's not your mentality, though, is it?
No, no. It hasn't been my mentality, given the circumstances of the community that we serve. I have to try to figure out ways to continue to show up for people who may be forgotten, and
Hmm.
you know, um, just again, like I've always told people that excellence is doing the best you can with what you have, and I want to continue to put my best foot forward, um, with whatever is before me. So, yeah.
Hmm. I get that. Yeah, I mean, it's like, we launched a co-working space in an event facility 2.5 weeks ago. The timing of that wasn't like ideal for us, right? That's like not what we needed to have happen. But that doesn't mean we can't bring people together still. Like the physical walls in that, in some ways, were a limitation to the potential of how we could bring people together.
Yeah. One other thing too, I would say is I would push back against the idea of using the term social distancing,
Hmm.
because I don't like that phrase, because it speaks to social isolation. What I would like to start using is, what we're talking about is physical distancing, right? We're keeping our physical selves away from other people, so we don't spread or contract COVID-19 virus. Um, Social distancing speaks to isolation, but what we're communicating right now, I mean, we're using technology because we're still trying to be social, right?
Hmm.
We need that social component, and during these moments, it's close to also lean into friends and be very intentional about who you're spending your time with, whether it's FaceTime or on Zoom or Skype, or who you're picking up the phone to have these in-depth conversations about, the dilemmas that you face. I think that's important as well, to not allow the idea of social distancing cause you to disconnect from people who could also give you perspective and wisdom with where you are.
Hmm. That's so good. So what if, as you kind of dig into this, you're like, we need to change. We need to pivot. It needs to go in a completely different direction, for sure.
Yeah.
And because I don't think, I mean, I saw a post from Seth Godin today about, is everything gonna be okay? Here comes Eryn. Eryn, welcome. We're here.
Hey, y'all. I told you I jinxed myself in saying I was bad at technology.
You're great. You're great.
Y'all, I have my iPad, my iMac, and my iPhone. I had all three of them set up with this stinking app. I ended
That's
on my
funny.
phone.
I love it. We're glad you are here and joining with us. So, Eryn, in the midst of all this, let me first let you take a deep breath. Take a deep breath, and we were joking as we were talking, like, isn't it funny? Like, we have to pivot in the midst of a conversation about pivoting, right? That's only ironic, right? So, what do you think? Like, I want to ask both of you, in moments like this, what do you think great leaders do? Because I think there's a bunch of people listening in. They probably are leading some community. They might be leading a business. They might be leading a nonprofit. They may be leading their family. I don't know what the scenario is, but when you think about that, what does a great leader do in these times? Eryn, you go ahead first.
I think a great leader takes a deep breath and realigns with their mission over scarcity. Because I think that we have, with everything that's being heightened, we can respond out of a scarcity mindset instead of what our mission and our core values are. I think a great leader uses this as an opportunity to learn more about what the triggers are of their team members and how to lead each personality differently, because they're all different. I have 6 people on my team and they're all different. They all have different triggers, different things that set them off to different types of ways that they work together. Me being very in tune with their emotions during this time is so important for me, to acknowledge their anxiety about it all. I think a good leader, stays on mission, doesn't respond out of fear of the media. I've never been proud of responding out of fear.
Oh, that's good.
It's really good. What would you add, Terence?
Yeah, I think leaders, take a moment to clarify the vision and cast a vision of a hopeful possible future to their team, to remind them that this is a pit stop. It's not the final destination, right? I think what many people are grappling with right now is that they think that this moment is the final destination, and it's not. It's a pit stop. It's a pause, but we're still on, we're on the journey for the long haul. And a visionary or a leader has to cast that vision that we are going to move forward. We are going to bounce back. We are going to do whatever it takes to continue to strive towards the mission that our company or whatever the individual stands for. I think a leader also is one that does not wait for other leaders. Um, a leader is someone who refuses to ask for permission in times of crisis. That a leader has to, think and reflect on ways in which they can proceed and not wait on someone else to, put them in the game, so to speak. And also a leader, just in full transparency, I agree with my sister Eryn, man. Like, you got to embrace your rawest emotions. Like, don't be a leader that just suppresses everything. Really sit with your emotions and feel them through, but also question them and don't allow them to dictate the discipline.
Yeah.
It's funny. This isn't funny, but thinking about the triggers of your team, Eryn, that was really interesting. I think, like, to really be a studier of the people that you lead. Can you unpack that a little bit more? Like, how do you identify those things, and how do you address them without being kind of the annoying leader,
I think with compassion, and I have a lot more grace, especially in a heightened time right now, where I know what media is saying everywhere. I mean, everywhere you look, it's very fear, and naturally so. There are things to fear about, but fear can be be our leader. And
Can you say that
so
one more
for
time,
me,
Eryn?
like recognizing,
Eryn, can you
yeah,
say that one more time? You put out in that one
that
statement right at the end you just said.
fear can be a leader. Fear can be the leader. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So yeah, fear can be the leader. And so for me, it's so important that I stay in tune with seeing how their behaviors are, how they respond to stress on a normal basis versus how they respond to stress right now. It's different. It's so different for me, seeing the differences between the two. And a lot of the people on my team are single. So isolation for singledom is hard. If you feel like you're isolating yourself, you're not going out, you're not engaging with the level of community that you normally do face to face with physical contact with people. When you're alone in your thoughts, I mean, we all know what that's like, the lonely leader. Like when you're alone in your thoughts, it can be scary. And so I recognize that in my team. Like some of the girls that are on my team are single. Some have roommates and some don't. And just being sensitive to knowing that will impact their just their execution on things or their response to maybe my constructive criticism or my challenge, or if I push back on an idea and it's received very like in a different way than what it normally is, it causes me to like understand it a little bit different and considering what everybody is consuming.
It's good. Wow. I remember hearing this question they originally asked you guys about what do great leaders do in this. I remember hearing Andy Stanley talk about this one time, who's, if you don't know who he is, he's a pastor in Atlanta, but thinks a lot about leadership. And he always says in these confusing times, he always sits back and says, what would a great leader do? And the rest of us think, what would Andy Stanley do right now? Right? Like, it's like, you think of this person that is one of the greatest leaders you've ever seen do these things. And you're like, what would they do in these scenarios? And they're in the same place as us, right? I think that's so, like, it's so real because the same people that we know that are, they're making decisions oftentimes that are impacting exponentially more people than we are, and that's humbling to think about, that they literally right now, there's no plan that you can point to that solves the current situation. Right.
Yeah.
So in the midst of that, I mean, how do you guys create checks and balances to make sure that your mission is staying the priority?
It's a great question. I think, again, it just goes back to like not responding out of scarcity, but the core values. And like our core values are to learn how to love ourselves and to love other people. And so what does that look like, for us within ourselves as a team to the people that we serve? And so the mission doesn't change. It's just how we do it might change. It might, like if the factory decides to close and quit doing fulfillment, are we going to quit doing our mission? No, we're just going to learn how to pivot differently, like what we've discussed before. And what's great is that we have a community of people where we produce content and we share content that reinforces how to love yourself and how to love and serve the people around you. So that doesn't change. It's just a matter of what medium do we do it in. What about you, Terence?
Yeah, I love the part that you said about pivoting to still move forward. But I want to say this, that pivoting oftentimes is seen as a failure. It's seen as a failure, and leaders begin to question themselves. Did I fail? Did I not follow through with what I originally set out to do? And I would push back against that. One of the things that I do is like really question a lot of the things that we have pivoted to clarify that this pivot has not been a failure, and that's your failure. So you have to disassociate your self-worth, so worth loving. Shout out to Eryn. with with your mission at hand, right?
Mm.
It's almost like, the rocket ship, when it launches into the air, it has all of these tanks and things to help it get off the ground, and it drops off. It's like a building. When you build a building, you have scaffolding, right? And then that falls away. Sometimes, the pivot doesn't necessarily mean that you're a failure. It could be setting you up for something successful. And the reason I share that is because just even this past experience right now that I'm currently in, like a hand washing station, now, cities are hitting me up from around the country trying to figure out ways that they can make this permanent for people who are houseless. I have a call next week with leaders in South Korea. What? I spoke to, a group of leaders in France a few days ago, all from a pivot. We were opening our center and I pivoted, and I was having these feelings or emotions inside like, oh, it's failing, it's crumbling. But the pivot actually opened up so many more opportunities for me to impact so many more people and to advocate more on behalf of people that our mission is tied to. So don't see pivoting as a failure.
It's interesting. I was thinking about this in preparation for this because I had a friend that leads an organization, and he took over an organization that was kind of in the middle of everything in New Orleans when all the flooding happened. And at that time, it was in some ways similar to this, like mass confusion, tons of people are impacted by it. The whole community is a part of it. And so then all of a sudden the government started getting involved, right? And started writing checks to some people, And I remember that he told me years later that he took a grant. It was a large grant because at the time it was like, we just need money, and 3 years later, he did the right thing. They did they did everything that the grant was supposed to do. But he said ultimately when he reevaluated it, he didn't take the time at the front end to determine if this was on mission. And I think that's a fear. I want to reiterate some of the things that Eryn was talking about earlier. Like sometimes we're looking for the financial solution to the scarcity that is right in front of us, right? Yeah. But he regretted taking that money, even though he did it and he went through it all. It was a lot of money, but he's like, in the end, this isn't what we do. We were just there and we're trying to keep going, Yeah. So I think there's this fear base that we are sitting in, and we need to do the right thing. We're trying to maintain the organization, but making sure that the solutions we come up with in the pivot line up directly with the mission is probably one of the most important things we can do as leaders.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think what Eryn said earlier was, spot on. What you're talking about is just, realizing your core values, because they're going to serve as guardrails and guidelines to keep you focused.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, we have some questions here I'm going to dig into here. Thank you to everyone that put in a suggestion. This is great. So what's your strategy? This is from, I believe it's Christian. What's your strategy for sourcing collaborators for projects you work on? What's your strategy for sourcing collaborators?
Oh, I mean, I don't know if I have necessarily a strategy, but just an openness. We use So Worth Loving. We use social media, honestly, to engage with people that we collaborate with. And we follow like-minded people that have the same vision and mission as us to collaborate with them. But then we also follow people that expand our perspective, that we maybe they have the same mission, but they do it so different, or the medium that they use is so different. I think that's really important because we can control what we see. So I think that making sure that you are allowing yourself to see all different types of opportunities of collaboration with different mediums is important. And social media is a great way to do it.
What would you add, Terence? That's great.
Yeah, I agree with Eryn. Social media has been a really great tool for us in like cross-pollinating efforts with like-minded individuals. Um, Another thing too, I would probably add is researching people who are doing things outside of like your interests, um, because those
Yeah.
people can give you tools and tips to enhance your work at hand.
Hmm. I've sat with both of you guys in different partnerships over the years, unpacking the good and the bad in some of those collaborations. Um, I would say a couple things that I've learned from people like you is, there's collaborators, there's partners, there's sponsors, there's different categories even within that collaboration, right? And so I like to say, like, how do you? It's like before you do a dive from the deep end into the pool, you kind of stick your toes in a little bit and see if the water is cold, or if
Right.
it's warm and it feels comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really important as you're picking those collaborators, partners, whatever level of interest, like start small and make sure that you want to go forward. Because sometimes I've seen over the years that sometimes people marry themselves to a partner too quick, right? And they didn't know what they were getting themselves into. And so I think that's a real part of it. Like it's amazing how when you do something really small together, you see so much about whether this is going to work or not, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I would. Can I tag team on what you said about that?
Yes, Eryn, go for it.
Yeah.
I also think that studying a pattern of a collaborator is really important. Like I like to study patterns in people and their characteristics. And I think, like you said, like stepping in small will show some patterns and you can decide on if you want to marry that pattern or not.
I love it. I love it.
That's good.
Here's another one, Eryn. This might be a follow-up for you. Someone was kind of asking for some advice on how to engage a team of volunteers as we pivot. You were talking about social media or using technology. Both of you guys have used a lot of volunteers in different components in your work. Any advice on that? How do you stay connected with them in this season of what feels like disconnectedness?
Yeah. One of the things that we've done, we have volunteers right now, like making phone calls, checking on community members who actually have phones from the house. And there's a rotation happening where, this intentional impact is still going on. Hey, Miss Diane, I was calling to check on you. This is so and so representing Love Beyond Walls. We just wanted to check in to see how you're doing. Another thing too is like some of our elderly community members, volunteers have stepped up to go pick up groceries and go grocery shopping on behalf of those persons. Another thing too is we have this volunteer right now that has a clinical background that is intentionally reaching out to people who wrestle with anxiety and depression, and just doing like mental health checks on people like that. But you can expand that in so many different ways. There's so many different things that you can delegate from the house and do virtually. Yeah.
Yeah. Zoom
Eryn,
calls, lots of Zoom calls.
Lots of Zoom calls.
Yeah. I think that if I'm confused on why they're volunteering for me, they're going to be confused on why they're volunteering for you. So I go back to the whole clarity thing again, being very clear of why they're serving, where they're serving at, and making sure that you touch base with them, whether it's through, depending on how many volunteers you have. If you have 100, text messages probably aren't realistic. And so just kind of figuring out where you can meet them at, what's realistic for your growth. For me, we have a small group of contributors. So, I mean, we actually have an Instagram group chat that we do where we send like inspirations that we see, quotes that we see, just like little fun things like that to encourage them. Like we have 12 contributing photographers. And so they all started this. And so that's just a fun way to keep the morale up and to all engage with each other. And we started a gratitude list. We're like, by 9 p.m., send your gratitude list and things like that to just kind of keep people's energy up in a time where, again, they're consuming a lot of maybe negativity.
Yeah, I'll add
That's
a few
good.
things. I'll add a few things with that. For me, I mean, both volunteers and donors, I'm thinking a lot about those things for us. It's amazing how a one sentence text message to people saying, "Hey, how you doing?" All of a sudden it turns into this flow of all kinds of other stuff that's happening. So first of all, I would say just check in with people. The second thing I would say is, I think, one of the challenges we all have in this season is wanting to still stay productive in the midst of a season where we don't see production happening, right? And so if we can come up with ways to engage volunteers where they can be productive, they're going to raise their hands immediately and want to help. And so for us, we've been reaching out to people consistently and saying, "Hey, can you be involved in this? Could you do this? Could you help this? Could you?" And the answer is yes, all the time, because they're looking for some way to be productive, for sure. So I would definitely add to that. Okay, there's more questions. I'm going to hit a few more of these. How can those of us whose whole model is centered around bringing people into the same physical space keep doing what we do? Does it have to just shift to being online, or are there other ways? Did you guys get to hear that?
Yeah.
Go for it, Terence.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry, I don't know what's happening.
You're fine, Eryn. We can hear you. So what we'll do is we'll just turn off your video and just keep talking.
Yeah.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, that's great. Man, I just, given the circumstances and the parameters of like what they're saying is best practices, keeping the groups under 10, making sure you practice physical distancing. I think technology it opens up an opportunity for us to even learn new skills and more skills of how we can leverage technology in moving forward. Like we were talking before we hopped on this call, Jeff, like who would have ever thought Zoom would have all this attention, right? Or Instacart, this service to deliver groceries is like skyrocketed where you have to order your groceries and it's 2 weeks out before. Some of the tools that have always been around are now being accessed. There's a DJ that I follow, D Nice on Instagram. He threw the world's largest party. It was
That was
called
on YouTube, right?
Yeah, it was called
Yeah.
Club Quarantine, right?
Yeah.
And he had Oprah in there and Michelle Obama and Mark Zuckerberg. All these people like went to his live feed and was listening to a DJ do music. He had over 100,000 people from all around the world, on his live. And that's just the power of, technology. I think what entrepreneurs need to start doing now is, pushing back against the barriers that we have in our mind and the limits that we place on ourselves based upon traditional ways of doing things. We have an opportunity now to think of new and innovative ways, right, to proceed and move forward that could also enhance our growth in our own personal leadership, but enhance the way that we do business.
Yeah, I mean, I think from an event, we're an event. We do tons of events. And we're counting on, we open a co-working space at this time, right?
Yeah.
All this stuff. Yeah. I will say this, on the back end of this, will things be different? Yes, everything is going to be different. I don't know how long this is going to last. I don't know how long we are going to have to social distance. Even when we're allowed to come back in some capacity, there's definitely going to be fears you have to overcome to gather people. You have to realize that there's some safety concerns you didn't have to pay for in the past. You have to pay for it going forward. You have to proactively think about that stuff. But I will say this, on the back end of this season, the desire for interaction with people is going to be greater than it ever has been before.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I agree. I can't wait to hug somebody, man.
Right now, and that's the question. That might not be what you do. That might not be what you do initially.
Right.
But to say that people aren't going to gather forever, I don't think that's what's going to happen. It's going to be different.
Yeah.
But there's going to be the desire to see people, to interact. And we got to think of ways to do it differently.
Right. Yeah, I definitely think that this is momentary. This will not last. But, in this pivot moment, making the best of these tools that we have at hand. But yeah, I agree with you, Jeff. I think, man, like people are going to be hugging and, holding hands and singing new songs. Seriously.
All right, we got like 5 more minutes. I'm going to take at least one more question here. Eryn might join in. We'll see. Let's see here. All right, one more, Terence. How do you provide assurance and encouragement for your team during a time of consistent change? I think it's a great question to finish up on.
Yeah, that's good. My encouragement only spills out to my team members based upon what I'm kind of feeding myself. Every single day I have a practice where I get up, I listen to certain content, I read certain material. I'm continuously digesting information that encourages me first. I don't think a leader can properly give encouragement if they are empty themselves. And so I try to do that beforehand. Also, I've been very, very intentional about limiting the negative content that I'm consuming. Like I have friends right now that call me and they're like in a panic. It's because they consume too much negative content. And I try to balance that. I'm not saying that I just like block off the rest of the world, but I do it in doses. Like I can only have so much of that type of media because it takes up mental space, right? It bogs you down. It increases the pressure. It causes you to be so focused and consumed with the present moment that you can't like look out and dream and imagine what's to come. And so I would encourage leaders to really figure out intentional ways to encourage yourself, and that same encouragement that you're feeding off of, then you share that with your team.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I think our team is seeing is like, don't be afraid to FaceTime someone. Don't be afraid to like have a face-to-face conversation more often, because I think just that connection is helpful. And like we all need it. We might not say we need it, but we need it. We don't know what somebody's thinking when we're making messages through Slack or through text messaging. Like get on the phone, like call them or FaceTime them, or get in a physical way where you can see loosely eye to eye and encourage them.
Yeah, that's good, Jeff.
Yeah,
John, I mean,
this
is encouraging right now.
Right? Yeah, to see people, to have interaction, to laugh, to encourage one. Back in the day, I used to work for John Maxwell, and he used to say, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that, I think in moments like this, like actually digging in and saying, hey, how are you? Are you okay? What can I do for you? I know we're not together, but what can I do for you? I think that will really help.
Yeah.
So Terence, Eryn, I think you just joined back on. Do you have anything more? Eryn, were you listening in on that?
I was listening to the whole thing. It won't let me be on it, but I was listening to the whole thing.
You're good. We just heard you. That question was like, how do you encourage your team in this really confusing time? What would you add to that?
I think anything that you can do. I like what you said, Terence, about limiting the things that you consume. I think it's encouraging them to do that. I think that there's a few apps like Calm that are more like teach you how to do deep breaths. Like encourage them to just take personal time to carve out in the mornings. Like I know that sounds very, very feely, but I think right now it's like a thing that we should be doing right now is encouraging our team to just have some time to recalibrate and not overconsume. I think just because social media, we can obtain it doesn't mean that we should. And so I think encouraging our team to just take social media breaks, have apps that kind of teach you how to do deep breathing, not shallow breathing, and just being in tune with their responses to maybe being too hard on themselves.
Hey, Eryn, yeah, for sure. Our screen time is up like everyone's screen time is like so high right now. So kind of getting off screen potentially could be healthy. Eryn,
Yeah.
so last thoughts from you as you think about and want to encourage the people that are listening in. Last thoughts on what advice you'd give as people are considering pivoting in this very different time and staying on mission. Any last thoughts that you have?
I think go back to your employee manual that you've given your whole team and read it. I mean, that's what I did. I mean, I looked back at what our core values were to make sure that I was leading in that space or not. And then seeing if my actions are producing that. Are my actions a product of what I truly believe, or are my actions a product, again, of scarcity, and being able to decipher between the two?
Love it. What about you, Terence? Last thoughts?
Yeah, that's good. You know, I'm really big on storytelling, and I think that it's an opportunity to you know, remember former stories, right? Stories of impact, but also find unique stories in the present moment that would help kind of like remind you of your mission, your values, and where you're headed. Those stories can be so life-giving, man. You know, one of my heroes right now is 7 years old in Philadelphia, and he took $700 that he had been saving for a while from all of his grandparents, and he's putting together bags to serve the elderly. That story right there is fueling me,
Wow.
and it's keeping me on mission, and it's reminding me that you know, better is possible. I'm reading it at the back of your wall, and that better can be. The future is good. Yeah.
It's good.
Well, I do want to say one thing. In the polls on the bottom, we asked a few different questions. One of the things that I think is kind of cool, how has your working from home impacted your relationships with your kids, your partner, your family, your roommates, etc.? And 78% of the people said it's causing us to grow closer together. And it's funny that that it's not funny. It's important to realize, yeah, we may not be working with the people we normally work with side by side, but we are oftentimes with the people that we intend to be closest to. And so even though this might be a change in your pivot for your business or your organization, maybe this pivot on the people that are closest to you might be the most important thing that could happen in your life today. So a little encouragement to you. I'm glad people shared about that. Before we wrap up, I do want to show you this little illustration that Caroline on our team did. And hang on just 1 second. I'm going to show this. This is some of the notes from today. Hopefully this pops up. Hopefully you guys can see this. These are just some of the notes that we captured from the very beginning. We have a series of these that we're going to email everyone right after this conversation. You'll get an email with a couple images like this showing some of the main points of the conversation we had. We'd love for you to share these online. Again, if you share online anything from today and tag at Plywood People, we're going to do some giveaways from that. We want to invite more people to this conversation. We already learned a lot. We learned a lot about technology. In the midst of pivoting, it's not going to always go as smooth as you imagine. You're going to learn stuff along the way. I'm sure Eryn and Terence can agree with that. But you have to start somewhere, and we did that today. Next Thursday, we hope to see you or hear from you again. Join us in the conversation with Brad. Thank you, Terence. Thank you, Eryn. Thanks for all the people that joined us. We're thankful to lead Plywood People, and we hope this community continues to grow and that we can be an encouragement to you. All right, we'll see you all next week. Have a great Thursday afternoon.
All right, peace.